Hey again, everyone. It's time for another fireside chat. I'm Dick D. Ziggin, the permanently unelected mayor of Coney Island. With it, for it, never against it. Today, I'm happy to have a guest here for the fireside chat. One of my best friends, Chris T.
Hello.
Chris.
Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. I believe Chris did in the mid 80s. I first got to know you playing music at the original Sideshows by the Seashore on the Boardwalk. You had a band, or with a band called the Nihilists. And then I think you did some sound work, and then I think you helped book some shows. And then you acted in plays, and then you became the MC of the Mermaid Parade.
And now I'm running for president. It's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing progression. No, I first met you the same night I met Richard Egan. That would have been like a June or July evening in 1987. Kaz brought me out to Sideshows by the Seashore because
Kaz is a well-known comic, underground
he's
comic.
now one of the top guys top people, I should say, at SpongeBob SquarePants. He's been out in Hollywood for many years, but when I knew him, he was a struggling underground cartoonist, and he's the person that got me involved with WFMU. But I remember he wanted to go see Wild Girls Go-Go Rama. She was a WFMU DJ.
And that was the start of the neo-burlesque movement.
That's what got us out to Coney Island, was to go see the Go-Go Rama. And that night, Richard Egan was doing the Florida Shark Show, turning the tip at the Florida Shark Show. And you were at your spot on the boardwalk at Sideshows by the Seashore. So that's the first time I remember meeting you.
Okay.
And
you mentioned WFMU. Just for filling out your awesome biography, you not only did a talk show for years called Aerial View on WFMU, you were on Sirius FM for quite a long time, were you not?
Yes, Sirius XM, yes. It's when I got there, it was still just Sirius. There hadn't been a merger yet. There hadn't been Howard Stern yet. But I started there in 2002 on the Blues Channel, hired by this guy, the Good Doctor, Michael Anderson, who was another WFMU DJ. And then 4 years later, I was asked by my now late friend, Jeremy Tepper, who passed away just this past June, as a matter of fact, to come and be a host on the Road Dog Truck and Radio Channel. And I did a talk show there for a dozen years.
What was that called?
It was called Freewheelin', apostrophe, no G at the end, and it was a live 3-hour show, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. weekdays, and we interviewed authors and athletes and celebrities and anybody that was in the building to talk to Howard Stern. They would usually come and see us afterwards because his show would wrap up somewhere between 10 and 11, and then folks would come by and see us. So I got to meet an amazing number of famous people over those 12 years. And if you had ever asked me, would you be sitting down across from Tom Jones, who was one of my mother's all-time favorites, and asking him questions.
Did you ask him, what's new, Pussycat?
I probably did, and then he probably resisted the urge to punch me in the face, I'm quite sure. But I do remember saying to him, if my mother knew I was speaking to you, she would plots. And
she probably would have thrown her underwear at him, not to disrespect your mother. That was a Tom Jones thing back in the day.
Like most women of that time, she loved Tom Jones. I'm sure that would have been her hall pass if she was still married to my father. But we would watch the Tom Jones variety show together. And then there I am talking to him. And I had that experience again and again and again with people like Robert Duvall and Carol Burnett and Cloris Leachman and just all of these folks who for years I had, seen on the big screen or on television, and then there they are sitting across from me, and I'm having to interview them for 20, 30 minutes. And at times it was really kind of nerve-wracking. You would just, one of my techniques is I would always try to think, well, this person was a child like me at one time. And then if I was stuck for something to say, I would try to take them back to their childhood. And
did you take Carol Burnett back to her childhood?
I may have. You know, it's been years since I've gone and listened to any of these interviews. I don't think after actually doing the interview, I went and listened to them again. So, I mean, I have a ton of the air checks at home, and one day I will digitize them, and then I will sit there and listen to them and think, why the hell did I ask that? I have no doubt. But, yeah. But, you know, back when I met you, the first thing I did for Sideshows by the Seashore was I would host the music nights, which was either on a Friday or a Saturday. I forget when we did those, but we would have a couple of 2 or 3 bands come in.
And that was up on the boardwalk, where Nathan's on the boardwalk is now, that same building.
So West 12th and Regalton, right? Yep. So the boardwalk. And so in the late 80s, it was still kind of Wild West up on the boardwalk.
But we were sort of like far out branch of the indie rock scene. Like there was Maxwell's in Hoboken. It was mostly downtown Manhattan, but we were part of that scene.
And we got some great people to come through there. I mean, Untamed Youth, Deke Dickerson's surf band, Landlocked Surf Band from Missouri. Bongwater, do you remember Bongwater playing there?
With Ann Magnuson.
Ann Magnuson and Kramer. And then all kinds of bands, like we did a WFMU benefit out there with the Honeymoon Killers and the Reverb Motherfuckers. Can I say motherfuckers on this?
You just did.
I probably can. And but I just remember many great nights out there, you know, in that space with the doors open and the ocean breeze coming in and having one hell of a good time, and actually DJing before the show too from a couple of turntables way up in this loft. And I was usually, it was usually hot as hell up there.
Oh yeah. What was the first Mermaid parade where you emceed the reviewing stand?
Well, I mean, I have a poster from the '87 parade, and I don't know if that was the first year that I helped out with Ray. Wasn't it Ray?
Ray Normando.
Ray Normando, who was the MC, and I was sort of adjunct MC, but it might have been '89, might have been my first one. It was either '87 or '89, and somebody...
But the parade was still pretty small at that point.
It was up on the boardwalk.
The reviewing stand was up on the... It was Surf Avenue and then came up on the boardwalk.
And they even allowed vehicles on the boardwalk back then. Remember the old cars would come up on the boardwalk? They don't let anybody with police vehicles up there.
And the boardwalk has since been landmark, and the community complains that NYPD and sanitation still drive on the boardwalk and break the boards, which have not been replaced in a long time. So I'm glad the parade is not getting that criticism.
Kids with the open-toe sandals, you're going to get a splinter. It's inevitable. Just go with it. Bring it home as a souvenir of Coney Island, okay? It's fine. Didn't they fill in under the boardwalk years ago? I remember you telling me the Army Corps of Engineers pushed
raised the whole level of the sand several feet.
Right. So you can't do like the Drifter suggested and go under the boardwalk anymore, right? You can't do that.
Well, unfortunately, there are still a couple of spots where you could sort of sleep under the boardwalk, and there's been some issues with those people lately.
But the relationship between you and I also extended to, as you mentioned, me performing on stage in a couple of the productions that you had written. One was Kid Twist, the story of Abe Rellis from Murder Incorporated, who they threw out of a window at the Half Moon Hotel. True story. Told in a very surrealistic style. I would like a revival of that show, by the way.
I didn't write it, I directed it.
Oh, Len Jenkins wrote it. You directed it, right. But it should have a revival.
And then you were in my play...
The Misadventures of Alice E. Newman.
Yeah.
Where I played multiple roles.
You were Cookie, the chef. Kills a baby.
I was.
Could you
what
say
was the name of the
baby?
I can't remember the words, but wasn't I one of the mouse characters or the rat or the
Ralphie Rat.
Ralphie Rat, which was a takeoff on Mickey Mouse.
Obviously,
That's right. Yeah. Which you could do now, right? Wasn't it in public domain?
Well, as long as you're making
version?
fun of the early black and white version,
That's
not
right.
the color version.
Yes, but we had some really good times out there with those productions, and we actually were able to get people to come out there even in the winter time. You know, getting people to come out to site-specific theater in Coney Island is not an easy thing to do.
Well, that was also the days when the Village Voice was still publishing and influential, and especially they covered off Broadway.
Yeah.
And that's long gone, that voice.
Yeah. And then the switch to like emceeing the Mermaid Parade and all of the stuff that I saw over the years, some memorable moments. The year Curtis Lewa and Queen Latifah were king and queen.
And he was barefoot. He
And
walked the entire
barefoot on
parade
Surf
route
Avenue.
barefoot.
And it was a hot day.
He's
and
a
Surf
little
Avenue
weird.
he's a bit,
He's a little weird.
we know that now. We may not have known that then, but we figured it out. And then I remember Queen Latifah, she was in the direct sunlight, and I had an umbrella, and I handed her my umbrella, and she said, "Oh, thank you. You're a gentleman. Thank you." And I was like,
you are a gentleman. And she was really wonderful. I really like Queen Latifah, who I believe you helped get, because back when she did the Mermaid Parade, she was not a world-famous celebrity. She was known as a rapper. She was from New Jersey, and you helped get her.
From East Orange, New Jersey, and a friend of my friend Monica Lynch's, who was and still is involved with WFMU. There's a lot of WFMU, Coney Island, USA connections and sideshows by the Seashore Connections, but Monica was the connection who brought us Queen Latifah. But I remember, like, whenever the Mermaid Parade would roll around, I'd always say to Dick, "So, who's king and queen?" And he would be like, "I can't say anything just yet. We haven't nailed it down yet. Can't talk about it." And it would remain pretty much top secret.
Well, it wasn't a secret. It was
negotiations.
The hardest part of my job, year after year, trying to find a famous celebrity who would do it for free. And to ask a celebrity to do it for free, you had to bypass their manager or agent.
Right, because those people would be like, "You want to do what? You want to go where?
Okay, of course my client would do that for $30,000.
Right.
I was told more than once.
Yeah, and you were usually trying to find someone who had the corps d'esprit, who kind of got it, right? Who
What was that word?
The corps d'esprit, who was in on it, who understood the appeal of, Coney Island and Brooklyn and coming back. I mean, somebody like Lou Reed, for instance, perfect. Lou Reed and Laurie Anderson, because he had a connection to Brooklyn, and someone like that. I mean, other people...
You're saying Joe Franklin didn't have it?
No, I think Joe Franklin was probably a pretty perfect king of the Mermaid. Who was queen the year he was king, do you remember? Was it a can of Martin paint?
No, it was a wonderful fashion model who was from my neighborhood, Jean Becker, who was a presence in Soho in the club scene back in the day.
Okay. Does anyone else stand out for you in terms of, because we're talking about, like, I did it for 30 years. So
I did it for 41 years.
41 years.
I'm still marching.
And you're still marching. So in terms of standouts, people who you thought really did get it. I remember David Johansen, he got it. David Johansen was great.
He so got it. He took it to a different level where instead of just accepting everything we had prepared for him, along the parade route, he would stop the parade, stand up in the rolling chair, and issue proclamations as if he were the king.
I hope that's someone got some video of that.
I wouldn't have access to it.
There is so much video. And
David Byrne was a great King Neptune. His costume obscured his face, and if you were a David Byrne fan and went to the parade, you might not have realized the Ice King was David Byrne.
It was David Byrne. I can vouch for that. It was
David Byrne.
But I always felt like a fraud when the parade would roll around, because here I am living in New Jersey for many years in Hoboken and involved with this New Jersey radio station, and then I'm coming out to Brooklyn. It would usually be like I would try to get out to Coney Island 3 times a year, and the Mermaid Parade was one of them. And I would always think, well, is anyone sitting over there saying, wait, this guy's from New Jersey? What the hell is he doing out here emceeing the Mermaid Parade? But the Mermaid Parade is for everybody, and it drew people. It still
From
does.
everywhere, not only the tri-state area, from across the United States. I remember how astonished I was in the late 80s when the parade grew, and there were literally participants flying in from Japan.
Yeah, wow. And then my approach in later years was to get there as early as I possibly could so I could get a parking space. I would show up at 7 o'clock in the morning. And then I would help.
This is good advice on how to do the Mermaid Parade.
Yeah.
Look for parking 7 a.m.
7 a.m. Because one year I was dating this girl. This is before I met Sweet Tea, but she was gonna accompany me to the Mermaid Parade, and for whatever reason, she was running late when I went to go get her in the place where she was living at the time. And I just remember literally getting to Surf Avenue, and it was around 11:30 if the parade started at noon, or if it was 12:30. It was 30 minutes before I was supposed to get on mic, and I was frantic. I was just like, there's nowhere to park. I don't know what. I don't even remember if I turned the car over to her and said, you park the car. And I got out and I started running so I could get there on time.
And I was like, she show up 7 hours later?
She probably just drove around during the entirety because she couldn't park. I mean, forget it. So I said to myself, that's never happening again. And that's why I started showing up really early.
Quick, 3 tips for the Mermaid Parade in the future. I will throw one out. If you are a judge on the reviewing stand, do not eat or drink any of the bribes that the contestants give you. You might find yourself tripping for hours.
Yeah.
You got a few other tips?
I do. A tip would be, if you actually want to get a nice spot, you want to be across from the reviewing stand. The reviewing stand is where a lot of the action happens. And in order to do that, you're going to have to show up pretty early. I remember there would be people. The parade steps off at what time nowadays?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. There would be people showing up at 9 a.m. to stake out a position for the parade. And they would get their little folding chair and they would sit there and they would have a prime viewing spot, because otherwise you're really not going to get one. And if possible, do not drive. Take public transportation. If you're near enough, get in a Lyft or an Uber. Driving is a mug's game, as far as I'm concerned. Trying to park is a mug's game. And beyond that, just approach it like a marathon, because if you peak too early, it's going to be problematic. So a lot of people overindulge, and I'm talking about even the people in the reviewing stand, the judges and so on, would just be blotto. Remember that word, blotto?
Blotto, yeah.
They would be blotto by the time, the thing was...
so blotto.
Yes.
Let's move beyond our mutual past.
Let's.
These days, I know you've been buying and selling antiques.
Yes.
What else you travel a lot?
We have been doing some traveling. We recently spent a week down in the Jersey Shore.
We as you and Sweet Tea.
Me and Sweet Tea, and then her cousin and the cousin's family came along on that trip. That was nice. In a few weeks, we're going down to Tennessee for a music festival. We try to get out to California during the winter and see friends out there. I mostly these days, because I did have an antique store, I was dumb enough to start a business during the pandemic. And up in Saugerties, I had that cave, which lasted for about a year. It's almost like the Camelot of antique stores.
You love doing it, though.
I did love doing it, yeah.
Unfortunately, there were some issues.
There were some issues involving family. It's true when they say don't go into business with family. It's true. But it was something my father had done. My father had an antique store, and one of my early bonding experiences with him was going to flea markets and going to antique stores and going to junk shops.
And you go to the Meadowlands every week, or?
Meadowlands Flea Market is one of the greatest flea markets in the country, and it's about 7 minutes from my house.
And you shop, or you sell, or you do both?
A couple of times I have actually vended there. I've crossed over to the other side and been a vendor, and it's gone pretty well, and I'll probably return. But mostly I'm there on the hunt, because I don't hunt with a gun. My form of hunting is looking for cool old shit at the flea market. The problem is my house is now full of cool old shit. So I'm in a divestiture stage at this point. I'm trying to get rid of stuff.
So what are 2 or 3 top things that somebody might want to buy off of you that are available today?
Well, that's a good question. I got a lovely Schlitz neon sign at home that is one that I can't find on the internet anywhere. I think it's because it says Schlitz and then on tap. And you don't see these. And it's a large sign. It's about that tall.
And how much is the Schlitz neon sign?
Well,
if somebody wants to contact me or you.
The friendly rate, so I can get my beak wet a little bit, I would let it go for $275. Just contact me. Mm-hmm. It's a lovely sign. But that... I bought that thinking it would fit in a particular window in our basement, and then it's about that much too tall. It's literally like a 1/4 inch too tall.
2 other things for sale.
2 other things that I would like to get rid of that came out of the Meadowlands flea market. Let's think for a minute. I mean, I got various framed artwork that I certainly would let go. By the way, I will be at the Mowers Flea Market in Woodstock, New York on Saturday, September 28th. And that thing runs from like 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. If you're in Woodstock, New York, come by because a lot of this stuff's going to be available there. So instead of me trying to remember what it is that I've got packed away in closets at my house, just come on by the Mowers Flea Market. And I'll if you say you saw me in this video, I'll cut you a break.
You heard that. You can get a break in Woodstock if you say you saw this video.
Absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you're in the same boat as me. You're somebody who's always managed to find cool old shit.
I grew up in the business. My father and my grandfather were used furniture dealers.
And for years, there used to be pretty good flea markets here in Coney Island. Right?
Yes.
I remember those. The
it
Russians.
Was bad for the neighborhood. The entire north side of Surf Avenue was nothing but flea markets. It was not good for tourism, but for somebody like me, I would every single day go and walk the stretch of vendors early in the morning, and I got so many things.
I do too. I'm sure I still own stuff that I pulled out of one of those piles of stuff because it was the kind of, like my antique store was pretty curated. You could walk around the entire place. These places in Coney Island, it was like the Collier brothers opened up an antique store. And for you kids who don't know, the Collier brothers were a couple of brothers lived in Manhattan who were killed by their own shit when it all caught on fire because they had so much of it.
So much.
They were hoarders.
Is there any place like that still around?
There are. You know, I've been into a few places where you got to walk sideways like a crab.
Name one.
Can't.
A place.
I'm sure there's a couple of places down the shore in New Jersey that I've been to that are like that I probably won't go back to. Just as quickly.
I took a little vacation 2 weeks ago down in Pennsylvania, even in an official large antique mall. Of course, the prices are much cheaper than in New York City.
Yeah. That's why I usually have sticker shock because I'm so used to the prices at the Meadowlands flea market. And even so, what's happening there is more and more times you'll pick up something and they'll be like, "Do you know how much that goes for on eBay?" And my response to that is, "This isn't eBay. This is the flea market. If you want to sell it on eBay, sell it on eBay and deal with the fees you're going to take and the shipping you're going to have to charge and the schmuck who's going to return it to you when they decide it's not as described." Because believe me, I sell a lot of stuff on eBay.
Hey, so what else is on your mind these days?
Really the state of Coney Island, if we could just cover that for a minute, because I know you've been out here since the late 70s.
I've been out here for a couple of centuries.
And so the changes you've seen are pretty remarkable in that time. And I do credit folks like you and Richard Egan, and who else was the Coney Island Hysterical Society?
Philomena.
That's right. And they're writing a book, by the way, about their time with the Coney Island.
And let's not forget Marquillo also.
Marquillo, who was a roommate of mine for a while, actually, in Tenafly, New Jersey. But so what are some of the trends that you're seeing out here that you find encouraging and that you think will lead to, because I mean, there have been periods that I've known you when the ongoing success of Coney Island was not guaranteed, you know?
Well, since I've been lucky enough to have an influence, and I've watched Coney Island literally for 45 years now, I've been in the community, I think we're headed in the right direction. There are more rides and state-of-the-art rides and safe rides than there have been at any time in Coney Island since the early 60s. That's remarkable, even though the potential area for the amusement park was shrunk. Most of what was taken away was undeveloped empty property, where they've been building a lot of housing. But it's a neighborhood that maybe could use a couple of middle-class people. I'm not talking about affluent people in condos. I'm talking about rebalancing the neighborhood. And in those apartment stores, whether they're technically considered affordable or if they're a little higher priced at market, all of the new stores are putting in ground floor retail. And there's a new bagel shop I like. And
nice.
There's a new supermarket, and I could live healthier.
There's a bubble tea place across the street.
There's a bubble tea place across the street.
But I hear what you're saying. Let's not make it into Williamsburg, because Williamsburg is now a victim of its own success, you know, and people can't afford Williamsburg anymore. And you still need places where working people can live. Yes. That isn't
But in terms of the amusement park, it's no longer, the property is pretty much no longer privately owned. It's city-owned and leased to Luna Park,
right?
But a long-term lease. And I would like to think that Coney Island is well situated to exist with its current new infrastructure for another 50 years. And that's been one of the goals of my life. In my particular neighborhood, the area adjacent to the amusement park where I live, I'm very proud to have worked with our new city councilman, Justin Brennan, to point out to him that there were blocks and blocks of sidewalks on the east end of what they call the west end, where the city had, before COVID, dug things up to put in new sewer lines and never repaved those sidewalks. And as an old guy who uses a cane, one of the reasons I've been using a cane is because I fell 3 times on those broken sidewalks. So I'm happy to see that happening.
And then the other reason is the top of the cane unscrews and there's a sword in it, right? Isn't that the other reason?
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely. Was that, we could edit that part out. That part we could cut out. But I do feel like absent folks like you who came out here and brought the artists to Coney Island, it could have gone completely differently, the trajectory of this place.
And all across America, amusement parks disappeared and got replaced by condos.
Yeah. So, and Coney Island deserves to be here for
what was that big park on the Palisades?
Palisades Park. I used to go as a kid. My parents would.
And that's what? It's all housing. Yes. Freedom Land closed, and that's up in the Bronx that is...
So Rye Playland, you thinking of?
No,
Rye
Rye Playland
is
is still there, but
Yeah.
Freedom Land became Starrett City. It's got a different name now, something Creek.
And the thing about this stuff is we need amusements now more than ever. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we need places to go and get that joy that you can only get from a place that's engineered to amuse you. And, you know, you and I have talked a lot about Disney, and you have talked about the Disneyfication of various places. And the thing that always struck me about Coney Island is it was mom and pop. You know, it was people owning their ride, owning their lot, whatever it might be, but running it independently.
And the Voderis family from Dino's Wonder Wheel Park still does a good job as a family-run, small amusement park. And even the larger new park, Luna Park, we could have ended up with a Legoland. We could have ended up with Warner Brothers. We could have had something that was just oriented toward children, and I thank Luna Park for theming itself based on Old Coney Island and recreating the pinwheels from Luna Park everywhere.
Having some sense of history.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not a whole lot. It's an amusement park after all. It's artifice.
Yeah.
But they did the right thing.
And the thing that people may not get about amusement parks is they were always a harbinger of innovation. So they were always putting in new rides. They would pull out a ride, and when the new thing was invented, they would put in that ride. So I know we get nostalgic about certain things. And you know, it did hurt my heart when the carousel moved. But
it's still here.
It's still here.
Which is better than a lot of places where the carousel
sell off
moves
the parts.
And that's it.
But yeah, it is. I know you particularly get excited when a new season rolls around and somebody is putting up a new ride and
a new restaurant.
New restaurant goes in, so that's always good. But you know, in terms of me, where I am now, I consider myself semi-retired at this point. My wife is retired, and I have been doing a lot of writing. I'm working on a book about my old band, the Nihilistics, and I still do some freelance audio work here and there. But otherwise, we're having a nice time in Weehawken, New Jersey, where Burr shot Hamilton. So
I am trying hard not to retire. I'm fairly new to doing interviews like this, and I have to admit, I'm pretty bad at it mostly. I talk too much. And it's Christine, my good friend, who's been coaching me. How am I doing in this interview?
I think it's great. I'm more worried about Jen's arms getting tired.
If I've shut up enough and let you talk?
Yes.
Then let's end it there.
All right. That's a good place to end it. Here we go.
Say goodbye to the good folks.
It was really nice having a little bit of time here and actually being interviewed for once. I'm usually the one doing the interviewing, so this was a nice change of pace.
All right. And we'll see you soon with another fireside chat, most likely a week from today. Bye.
That ought to hold the little bastards. Wait, I'm sorry. What have you done?